everyone, to our Northlands AMA, where you get to ask questions from the writers and designers of our upcoming Kickstarter, the Northlands. Um, Before we dive too deep, I think it's important for us to maybe introduce ourselves. I'm Dot. I'll be your moderator for tonight. Please excuse my raspy voice. I'm still overcoming. I've been home like 24 hours from a convention, so I've got convention voice. But we're here tonight. I'm very, very excited to have this conversation because Northlands is one of my personal favorite settings. But before we do, I'm gonna let you all go around and introduce yourself. And Brian, you're first up on my screen, and then I'm gonna let you pass it to somebody else.
Oh, okay. My name is Brian Suskind. I'm a game designer for Kobold Press. I've designed from the beginning, I guess. Probably most known for Mimics. Designed the original Southlands book along with Ben McFarlane, and I was the lead game designer on the Northlands and Northlands Sagas. And Bashir, you were here when I got here, so I'm going to throw it to you.
Hey, I'm Bashir Gauss. I am a writer and game designer. I freelance for Kobold Press all the time. I did a bunch of setting work for the Northlands. It is entirely possible I've done something else for it that I've forgotten about, but that is the stuff I am aware of.
You got to pass it, Bashir.
Oh, yes. Brady, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Brady Morris. I'm the new guy on the stage. I have only recently started doing some freelancing for Kobold Press, but it's been super exciting. My first was an adventure called Trollfall, which came out earlier this year. It was a ton of fun to work on and see the Kobold crew put it all together. And I was super thrilled to be invited back to work on Northlands. So happy to be here. Really excited to hear what you guys got.
I know we have some big Trollfall fans out there, so shout out in chat, give some love, love that. Very cool. Well, we're gonna get deeper into what each of you have kind of contributed and talk kind of openly about what you can expect in between the pages of this book. But before we do that, I think it's really important for us to answer this question, which is what is a campaign overlay and how does it work? Why is it different than just a regular setting?
Well, and before I answer that question, Dot, I can talk about everything at this point, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know that you can't talk about anything that's a stretch goal.
Right. Oh, now I have to
And
remember
everything
what
else. Yeah, no. But basically, if it's in the pages and being edited, you're good to begin revealing things. Yes.
Okay. So a campaign overlay is the idea that we've sort of fooled around with this for a while with a lot of different books. We tried it with Waste of Chaos. The idea that you can pick this up and drop it into your campaign at home, but it is also Midgard at the same time. And with Northlands, it was funny because it's Midgard, but we also wanted it to appeal to people who have no idea what Midgard is. And so we had to walk sort of an interesting line between making it Midgard, so the Midgard fans would go, "This is Midgard," but also make it accessible enough where people who had no idea what Midgard was could drop it into whatever game they're playing. And the way we decided to do it was to basically make it, Midgard without accessing the rest of Midgard. So, so how does that work? Well, instead of saying like, oh, they're going to sail from here to, Barsala, or they're going to go take on pilgrimage to Zobek, we just really sum it up as they're going to southern lands. They're raiding the southern lands. We have no connective tissue to the rest of Midgard unless you're a big Midgard fan and you can read between the lines quite easily and go, oh, I see what they're saying here. So a campaign overlay is basically, yeah, exactly. So it's basically the best of both worlds. It's Midgard, but for people who have no idea what Midgard is, it's a fully contained Northland setting that they can use with whatever game campaign setting they happen to be using.
Which makes it available for literally everybody to bring to your table, which I think is one of the best things about it. Now, we're kind of talking about Northlands as if everybody potentially listening to this, even later on YouTube, knows what the Northlands are. Do you want to maybe give us a top down? What's your elevator pitch? Tell us a little bit.
So, Northlands is your cold northern campaign setting. We got Vikings, we got gods that are walking around fighting giants. It is your Norse-inspired, fjord-based Viking setting. You know, this is the place. If you want to have a game where you're going off raiding in between adventures in the dungeon, this is where you're going. You know, it is, you know, the power of cold is ever present. You know, there's no more of this, oh, I don't need to know what kind of jacket I'm wearing because my character doesn't care about the cold. No, they will now. Because it is really cold there. And, you know, we really tried to flesh out the areas of Midgard from the Midgard Worldbook that we felt hadn't gotten a lot of love. Because that really was kind of rounds out. If you look, you know, the Northlands Worldbook is great. And the Northlands is great because it's Vikings, it's, you know, epic heroism, it's, you know, trying to forge your fate, and it's trying to earn a place in Valhalla. We got Thor, we have Loki, you know, we have Wotan. It's everything that you want from for a Viking-based game. But in the Midgard Worldbook, we just didn't have the time and the space to really flush things out, and that's what we did. That's what we wanted to do with this book.
Very cool. Well, we talked a little bit about the differences of what we're going to say between the Northlands and this, and the Northlands maybe in the Midgard Worldbook, but what about the differences in the versions? This is being released as both a 2024 and available on D&D Beyond, as well as a TOV version. So I know we talked about it a little bit before, for maybe those that weren't here, what's the difference?
So the way this came to be is, quite honestly, D&D Beyond said, hey, do you have anything you want to pitch to us to put on D&D Beyond? And we went, well, yes, we do. Because let's face it, D&D Beyond gets a vast audience, and we'd be silly not to take them up on that. It was an interesting experiment for me because, you know, is there differences? Yes, because TOV and D&D 2024 are somewhat different. However, as we all know, those of you who are TOV fans, it works perfectly well with D&D 5e and D&D 2024. So the quote unquote differences are going to be more in the realm of little mechanic changes. You know, like there's no luck system in 2024, but we have it in TOV. So there's going to be little bits like that we're just that we're changing around, but the meat of all of this is the same. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Bard and clerics need extra sub. Exactly. There's some subclass differences, and you know that's some of the things that we're going to be doing with the conversion is, you know, making sure that we want it to work with 2024, and as the new mechanics in this book, I wrote them with this thought of, at some point, we're going to want to make this work with TOV. So I tried not to write myself into a corner.
That's good. So we'll actually talk a little bit about mechanics here, but that does lead me to really the next question, which is I want to hear a little bit about what each of you have contributed to Northlands Kickstarter. Now, I keep saying Kickstarter because it's actually 2 books, everyone. It is the World Book, the Northlands kind of core that we're talking about, the campaign overlay, and then there's also Northlands Sagas, which is such a cool name, very metal, and so I look forward to hearing a little bit more about it, but I want to hear what each of you have contributed.
Well, you should have Brady and Bashir start with this, because I wrote.
Yeah, you know, I was going to say, yeah, Brian, we'll come back around to you, but I would love to hear from the other 2.
Easier to say what I didn't.
Sure, you want to take it away, Bashir?
Sure, absolutely. So I did a bunch of adventure locations for the Northlands. I did. These were all fleshing out things that were generally mentioned in previous stuff regarding the Northlands, but never got really a deep dive or never got a proper location or concept write-up. So I wrote up Rikerbrand, I wrote up the Selkie Isles and Selkie Shoals, and I wrote up the Vater Mounds, and I wrote up the Shards of Argelmir, which are, I think, the first thing that was like a new concept for the Northlands book. let's see. Rikerbrand is Surtur's kind of abode and lair, where Surtur and Sinmara live. Um, let's see. The Selkie Isles are an isle populated by Selkies who are on less than pleasant terms with the rest of the Northlands at the moment, due to recent events. The Vater Mounds are more of a broad concept of like the funerary practices around burial mounds in Midgard and the undead that result from them and why they pop up. Sometimes because they've not got much else, like sometimes because someone's disturbed their grave, and sometimes because they've got ulterior motives for coming back in terms of getting into Valhalla or not. And the Shards of Argelmir, which are kind of a short jaunt into like cosmic horror and more like other more overtly twisted and aberrant stuff in Midgard as like shards of the world before Midgard that are now little slices of alien realms, like Leng and the like, that are their own unique blend of unpleasantness, which was very fun to work on.
So I'm gonna make you choose between all of your children. Do you have a favorite thing or
Oh,
like
Shards of Argelmir. Absolutely. I will say that in front of the other ones.
They know what they did.
talk a little bit about why?
I really like messing. I really like cosmic horror as a genre and like that sort of like sci-fi-esque sensibility in fantasy, and this sense of like you are now in a place where you do not belong in some way that is not meant for you to exist in, and I like the the example shards that I have in there are pretty small, but were a lot of fun to write and design around. There's these mountain veins kind of just stretched across an entire mountain that are like the desiccated capillaries of a dead god, that you can find all sorts of weird parasites feeding on the like a kind of weird ecosystem inside of it, and you can go in there looking for god's blood. There was the Fields of Langyorm, which are kind of a enormous metal disc, and anything that's not living that's out there too long, for example, your bedroll or tent while you're in it, gets absorbed into the disc and made part of it.
That's
And also,
cool.
because it's just a featureless metal disc, difficult to navigate for obvious reasons. And so just doing stuff like that is something I always really enjoy making for various settings.
That's 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 really cool. I think sometimes when we think Vikings Northland, we don't think about the kind of darker edge of it all. And it sounds like you've kind of delved deep into that. All right, Brady, what about you? What have you contributed?
Yeah, so I wrote one of the adventures in the Northlands Saga book. My adventure is called Attack on Berg Krona, and it's a 9th level adventure where the PCs are basically tasked with besieging or infiltrating an ancient giant's fortress that the big bads have kind of focused all of their resources into. So the player characters have to get in, they have to find those baddies, take them out, and I basically just wanted to design it in a way where the players could get in and cause as much trouble as possible, both for themselves and both for the bad guys. And there are traps and allies to rescue and enemies to be tricked by, and just all sorts of every fun little idea that I could cram into that as the players kind of carve their way further down the Northlands saga.
I love that. Okay, so I can't really ask you what's your favorite trial, but is there maybe a piece of part, an NPC, something that you just really love from the adventure?
Yeah, I think there are two. I think one of them was the prompt that I got for this adventure was just super inspiring. There's so many fun parts in it that I was able to really play with. One of the new monsters being introduced in here. Is it okay if I spoil a monster?
Yeah, spoiler alert, we're gonna talk a little bit more about monsters, but that's when I'll bring Brian in. So you get
Okay,
this.
cool. So I was introduced to one of the monsters called a rune wight. It's this like ancient undead that is like obsessed with the power of runes. Runes being this massive, super important part of like all of the Northlands Saga. And these rune wights are obsessed with it. And so I got to use them in my adventure, and I was like, well, obviously they've been doing all this research. They're hungry for knowledge. Like I'm gonna have a rune that they've uncovered and have utilized throughout the fortress in all sorts of little devious ways. Like it was such cool lore, and I found a fun way to kind of make it usable for the players and like interactive so that the players can have something to both learn. I think that's one fun part about lore, but also like utilize, react to, play with. um, and then the other thing, my other, I think, favorite little thing, much simpler, is just that, not to spoil too much, but the final boss fight may or may not include an ice skating bear folk, which I think just about
All
that's
right,
all I have to
everybody.
say.
That's great. Who doesn't love an ice skating bear folk? Fabulous. Well, I think Brian, we're going to turn over to you. As you so pointed out, you've written a lot of this book, and I think
I wrote
based on
everything else.
I know, based on what's kind of coming into chat, I am actually going to cover some of these questions because they overlap with the questions that I prepared. But let's give a little bit of a top down about maybe some new mechanics that we can see coming. Not really about the conversion between one system or another, but the actual new stuff.
Well, I think the ones that I'm most excited about, there's 3 or 4. Chapter 7 of this book is pretty much New Mechanic Town. We start off with sort of a reputation system because in the Norse sagas and the Eddas, your personal honor and your reputation is very important. And so I wanted to reflect that in this, and I utilized some of the reputation system from the TOV Player's Guide and adapted it for the Northlands with a new wrinkle. So you can earn or lose reputation based on what you do as a player. But there's other systems that do that, and usually, like even the old Midgard Worldbook had their status system. The problem was that was always sort of reactive. It was sort of like, if it's high, the NPCs will talk nice to you. And I was like, no, this needs to be something that you can utilize. So we have something called a reputation challenge where you can use your reputation and become the GM for a limited amount of time. You basically take control of the game and you tell the rest of the players and the GM how the scene goes. And you use it in a combat or outside of combat. It basically gives the player narrative control of the game.
That's cool.
Yeah, the GM always has the ability to go, I don't think a Tarask is here. And it has to be, there's guidelines that, it has to be a logical thing. It can't be like, I suddenly find a ring of 3 wishes. Well, like, why was that there? So there are stipulations, but it allows the player to be super creative. And those players that don't want to use it, you're not required to. It's just a fun thing that for those players who like to have narrative control can do. We also have a prophecy generator, which will be up in electronic form on the website.
Once we unlock it.
Once if we unlock it. So buy the book once. Buy it off.
Generator, right, online. We gotta unlock it there on the Kickstarter tomorrow.
And the way this works in the book is there are tables you roll on, and you basically can form a quote-unquote random prophecy. But the problem with prophecies as a GM was always that all of the work fell on me because I had to be the one to figure out how this was going to happen later, and it's a big drag. This system allows the player to go, oh, this is triggering the prophecy right here. So it can be vague. It's like when you draw steel under the black sun, a player can go, well, it's cloudy and the sun, it looks dark. I'm drawing a sword. That triggers the first part of the prophecy. And the GM can go, yes, it does. And if you fulfill the prophecy, you get a benefit. Or if it's a bad prophecy, a consequence, which is a mechanical, either a boon or a bane that falls on you when these things are triggered. And once it's done, you can pick up another one if you want to. And so it basically gives the player the ability to go, my prophecy's happening right now. And the GM, who doesn't have to like sit there and track the whole thing, can go, oh, great, it is great. That's awesome. Let's do that. So that system is really cool. And there's also a bonus random omen generator, just if you want to throw some weird stuff at your players.
We love a good omen.
Right. Is that Crow saying my name? Yeah. Then we have our flighting system. So flighting is an old Norse word for basically, it's a Viking rap battle. Okay, that sounds weird, but it is. It's a rhyming insult contest that they would do for fun. And as soon as I read that in this history book that I have here, I went, oh, we got to have rules for that. Because if nothing else, we have to have some convention somewhere where we have a booth set up where people can just do this at each other right on the convention floor.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you want that? And then we have our rating system, which people should have a lot of fun with. Because if you're gonna have Vikings, you need raiders, because that's like the hand in hand. It's like donuts and more donuts.
Well, speaking of canon, we should talk actually a little bit about maybe some of these monsters that we're going to be throwing at them from this book. And King Komodo wants to know, it sounds like there were a lot of new monsters being introduced, over 50. What's the range distribution of those, over their difficulty? What tier of plays may be recommended? What can we expect here a little bit from these monsters, Brian?
Well, we have the overall range is wide. I mean, I think the highest CR we have is a 22, and that's the Jotun, which you already saw in Tome of Beast 1, and this is a refresh on them. I will say that the majority of monsters range between, I would say, CR1 and CR12. And we have ones past that, but the majority are in that bracket. And this was a conscious choice, because here's the thing. Those of you who have run or played games, when there's one monster, that monster loses very fast. But when you have 8, that's fun time. So we made a conscious choice to do a lot of monsters that are slightly lower level, it's sort of in the mid, 4 to 10 range, because that way we can pile them on. Because, to me, the epic thing of, you're marching down the road, seeing one ogre is sort of like, oh, look, it's an ogre. Seeing 12, now you're in trouble. And in terms of distribution, we have a lot of monsters, quote unquote monsters, but then we also have a lot of NPCs, because I wanted to fill the world with shield maidens, and I wanted Vikings. I wanted we wanted a witch. We needed a witch apprentice. We wanted a pirate, a wandering druid. We want, because it's a lot of times it's hard to find some of these higher level NPCs to throw into your game. Yarrow, for example. We need one of those.
Well, we're also getting a lot of questions, I think, around kind of the specifics of things like species versus lineage, and will we be bringing new heritages in for the TOV, because that's obviously not necessarily part of 2024. So a little bit maybe on some of the character options, I would say, and what we might see in the differences from book to book.
Okay. Well, Bashir, you're doing some of the conversion, right?
Am I? No, I don't think so.
Okay. I see. I don't remember who's doing what. So, granted, so TOV and 2024 are different in terms of character options, because you have heritages, and and then you have backgrounds. 2024 has species and background, and that's it. So when we do the conversion, we're going to have to widen and sort of mix and match things apart. We have to pull things out of backgrounds and split them so we have heritages. So in that respect, that chapter is going to be different. In 2024, though, in terms of your player options, we have a bunch of new species, which I'm very excited about. because we put in bear folk because they have a whole kingdom there, and we figured it'd be really weird if we didn't have bear folk in there. And we have Trollkin, which we've had before, but I got to put Ratatosk in, and for the first time, we're having a tiny sized PC.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I figured out a way. And I have it's a sidebar. It is an option, and it basically says, "Listen, talk to your GM. If they're not down for this, you need to have this conversation." But what I finally kind of realized was there's not a lot of, if you're tiny size, there's really not a lot of things that give you a huge advantage there. I mean, yeah, there could be some niche things like, "Ooh, I can get through those bars." Well, it's like, well, yeah, you're a squirrel.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and they're not one, they're not 1 foot long. They're like 2, but still tiny. Because I mean, that was always, I love Ratatosk, but the problem was always that, like, if they're the size of halflings, they're not really squirrely to me. Like, small. Yeah, weird. There it is.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking about some player options, can we talk about the werekin here for a second, and maybe how they, and the giantkin?
Yes, we can. So, werekin are descendants from lycanthropes. They're, I guess, the closest analog I could think of would be shifters from Eberron. So they cannot assume full animal form, but they can definitely assume a partial hybrid form. And as such, lycanthropes are not, as you might guess, not exactly welcomed in most places because, the whole turning into an animal and killing people. Takes a certain type to really like them, and werekin get labeled with that big wide brush. But luckily enough, there's an entire kingdom of lycanthropes in the Northlands, up in Vargreich, and werekin are like, oh, we're gonna go live there. But they are found all over the place. They are a pretty cool race because they get to, they have these sort of animalistic abilities without kind of the big label of I turn into a slavering murderer every, several days. Because Midgard's, it can be tricky being old lycanthrope.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
People have opinions about getting murdered by giant animals every month.
Yeah, I mean, some people are real kind of funny about that kind of thing. And then we have the giantkin, because you can't really have a Norse-based campaign without talking about people who are descended from giants, because that's all over the mythology. And so we have giantkin who, when you decide to become a giantkin during character creation, you can pick which type of giant you are descended from, and you get various different options depending on who your ancestor was. They're still medium-sized, but, as you might guess, on the big end of that. And, it is a much different play experience being a fire giantkin versus being a cloud giantkin.
Right. Okay, I love this. All right, I want to talk a little bit now about the other book. We've talked a lot about what's probably going in the world book, but let's talk about sagas. So we know you kind of peeled the pages back on your adventure, Brady, but the sagas is more than just one adventure.
No, Sagas is a 12 adventure arc. It is Kobold Press's first real adventure path. We've had some connected adventure books in the past where it's sort of some vague, like Labyrinth was probably the closest before this one. But this one is a full-on, it is intended to be played together. You can play them separately, of course. We have information in there for how to do that, but they are a connected adventure. And the premise of Sagas is Loki, who in the past worked with some other gods to create the cult of Ragnarok, in this idea that we're going to fool people into thinking that Ragnarok is coming, has now changed his mind because the cult of Ragnarok has figured out a way to actually do it. And Loki's going, yeah, Loki's like, oh, I don't really want this to happen this way. And so he needs some plucky mortals to help him stop Ragnarok. Specifically, stop them from waking up Fenris.
Oh yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So
So
where does
it's
your adventure fall in all of that, Brady? You said it was
Mine,
level 9, so you must be deep in the chaos of it all.
yeah, relatively near the end. Mine's kind of like a culmination of finally getting to the point where like the players have gone through many trials, they've gathered many allies, and now the time has come that they can really kind of like take the fight back to the cult of Ragnarok.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I designed the sagas. I was trained as a screenwriter originally, so I basically made this a script. I did it as a 3-act structure, actually 4-act structure. But and so you open up with them trying to figure out what's going on, and then the next act is them, gathering allies. And then once they have their allies in place, the next act is them taking the fight to the cult to try to stop them. And the whole thing ends in Asgard.
The
The last
question in
adventure
the
is
chat was, is it a single or a double rainbow bridge?
uh, what would a double rainbow bridge be?
I don't
Um,
know.
I mean, it's whatever the gods want it to be.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the cool things about sagas is we created something called runestones that you get in the first adventure, and they are these magical items. They do not require attunement, and each of them has a rune on it that is based on one of the gods. And during the course of the campaign arc, these items improve. You get opportunities to improve your runestone, and they get better and better powers. In the final adventure, when the gods are Fenris is loose, he is spoiler alert, Fenris gets loose. He goes up to Asgard, and the gods are made mortal because he's there, and it's basically Ragnarok's on the verge of happening. You have to run around Asgard and rescue gods who've been separated by the giants who are also attacking Asgard at the time. And the gods you're rescuing are the ones in your runestones. And so you get the patron power, the biggest power you get from these runestones is if you are in proximity to the god whose rune you carry.
Okay. And I'm excited to say, we have an accessory for these runes, right?
Yes,
We
we
have
do.
rune stones. There's a deck too? Am I
Yeah, there's
making
a
that
rune
up?
deck
Yeah.
that basically it's like sets of 4. So each rune has a set of 4 cards. As you get the better powers, you get the next card for that rune. And as an add-on, I believe, in the Kickstarter, you can actually get physical rune stones, a bag of rune stones that you can give out to your players.
Oh, that's right. That's what. Yeah. Oh, and y'all should see it's labradorite. What's it called?
Labradorite, which is native
Labradorite
to
is.
Norway.
That's right. That is the stone we're using for those. It's really beautiful. We'll be revealing those soon.
Yeah, the sagas it was a really fun adventure path to write. All the designers did an amazing job. It takes you all across the Northlands. You go there. You're on Yggdrasil at one point. You meet the Norns. I mean, you are everywhere, and there's all kinds of things that link one adventure back to previous ones. So there's a lot of moments where you're like, "Oh my God, that was the thing from the third adventure," and those were not accidental. Those were things that we did on purpose because we're like, if you're going to do an adventure path, that's the fun part. When you
Right.
get the callback from 3 adventures ago.
I'm scrolling through here. So we do have a couple just kind of technical type questions, and I think they're important to answer. Frog Prince asked about, oh goodness, I've already lost it. What books are needed to be used with this? So the 2024, both of them will need core books, correct? Because this doesn't have core rules in it.
Yeah, the only the other than the core books, the only book that you would need for 2024 would be Tome of Beasts 1. That was the only book only other monster book that we referenced. And that was sort of on purpose because if this was going to be on D&D Beyond, Tome of Beasts 1 is on D&D Beyond, and so it became an easy cross-reference thing. And we didn't want people to have to be like, oh no, now I need to go buy this 8 books to use it. That's always lame.
This is also a bit of a fulfillment and technical question about the Kickstarter, and I'll see if I can't answer this for all of you, which is regarding kind of the time frame around additional VTTs other than D&D Beyond. It is a D&D Beyond exclusive for the Kickstarter time frame, which means right now we cannot promise anything before 6 months after the Kickstarter fulfills. So it could be a while before you see additional things. That being said, we are already in discussion with what platforms those will be, though I cannot confirm today exactly what those are. We do know that because we're putting out 2 systems, this is kind of new for us, right? 2024 and TOV. With the conversion, there is going to be time in between, and we know it will take us a little longer, but we want to be completely transparent about that. Through the process, we are actively discussing additional VTT platforms for Northlands TOV. It's just not going to be a part of this Kickstarter. All right, moving right along to some other fun questions. So let's see. This is an interesting one. Will the Northlands have their own area of the Shadow Realm, Shadow Roads, the Underworld? Does that connect in any way?
I mean, we don't specifically call it out, mainly because Empire of the Ghouls already sort of did it. So because Empire of the Ghouls has a whole part where they go to the Northlands and they, and so it was already there. That said, there are some hidden areas of the Northlands, specifically Hyperborea, that we do spend a little bit of extra time. We still kind of keep it a little vague for the GMs who want to play with this. But Hyperborea is this sense of there's remains of a highly magically advanced cities sprinkled out through the Northlands that is farther north than our map. And they come into the lore, they come into the history. There are various locations and items that are still floating around. So while we don't hit those specific like Shadow Realm because it's already there, we do wanted to keep that sense of sort of mystery and sorry, I just saw the question about Santa in the chat.
I was getting there, Brian. Way to ruin the surprise.
The word Santa caught my eye. I don't know.
All right, cool. Well, then I will move into, let's see. Oh, this is a great question. So will any of the subclasses or feats interact with weapon mastery, and how would that convert to a weapon option?
Oh, yes.
Maybe another conversion question.
So, I mean, we introduce, because 2024 does, all of their weapon stuff, and, hint, I like TOV ones better. But, don't tell them I said that. We do have, we do make sure that those options are in there. One of the things I'm excited about, God, I don't even know if I can say this. If I picked up something from Player's Guide 2, can I mention it here?
Yes.
Okay, well, Celeste will get angry at me later. One of the things I loved about the older editions was masterwork weapons.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a great middle ground between magic and just something that's really well made. And so Celeste recreated that for Player's Guide 2, and I went, hey, can I take that and put it in Northlands? And she's like, yeah, why not? So I did. And that plays into, we have some new weapon options that will then, work with weapon mastery and back and forth. So I think we have 2 new ones. Yeah, I think we have 2 new ones. So the answer to that question, yeah, we have new ones, and they will work back and forth with the conversion.
Are we expecting to see any of the new classes from Player's Guide 2 represented in Northlands? That would be the Witch, the Theod, or the Vanguard.
Yeah, the Witch has a subclass.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
I think. Am I thinking of the next book? I'm thinking of the next book. Hang on a second.
Well, don't get too excited. We can't talk about that one yet.
I know.
While you peep it, I want to ask this question because I think it's fun. This one's going to be for Brady and Bashir, which is, I don't know how much of the book you've actually got to look at. Obviously, you've each contributed in different ways, but we have someone in chat that wants to know, of all the things you didn't write, what is your favorite?
Oh,
I have not
I-
gotten to look at much of. I have not gotten to look at much of the book yet, so I'm going to
Therefore,
have
your
an
answer
answer to
is
that.
right
Like,
here.
no, I agree. I haven't seen I've seen an updated version of my adventure, but nothing else, and I am foaming at the mouth for anything. I can't
Yeah.
wait.
Okay.
mhm.
Find it, Brian.
So yeah, I was thinking of the next book.
Oh,
So the reason we don't have new stuff for the Player's Guide 2 option is because we started this while Player's Guide 2 was still in the works.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And they didn't have anything done for us to use. So, and
I
So
did.
then
if because of 2024, because of
that would be the other
2024,
thing.
yeah.
They're not available for a 2024 build at all. So I heard you, Brady. What were you saying?
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thing that I did that I read in the outline at least. I hope it survived into the full book was the concept of like a home ganga, which I think is like a
Oh, yeah.
like a kind of ritualized dueling system for like an honorable duel. You can challenge someone and face off and like just it ties into the like kind of Norse honor, attitudes towards honor and everything in a really cool way. And that was something that I included in my adventure. I can't wait to see how those kind of work out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
very
definitely in there. Yeah, it's
Oh,
definitely in there.
good.
The funny part about that was I really thought it was going to be bigger, like the rules. When I was like, okay, it's going to be this dueling system. It's going to be, and then once I got started on it, I went, okay, well, it's really talking about combat, which there are already rules for that.
Yeah.
And it ended up being much more about like how it starts and what it means than it was about like, okay, now you go, sort of a thing,
right.
because that was sort of already there. Yeah, it became short and sweet, but I will say that the majority of the first chapter of this book delves into the society of the North and about fate and about their feelings about honor and reputation, and because fate for the Northlanders is written, but you don't know what it is, so
Yeah.
you can't escape your fate, but you also have no idea what it's going to be. So the only thing you can do, that's where luck comes in, because you might be fated, unbeknownst to you, to die in this battle, but you don't. But luck is the thing that's going to make it be that do you enter that battle as as a jarl in charge of an entire army, or are you basically some guy in the back?
Mm-hmm.
I
And
think
that
that
all.
that was one of the things that I thought was really interesting and drew me to this. I was an English major, so I had some exposure to like Norse sagas and the prose edda and all those, and like the Norse ideas around things like fate and honor and like what it means to be like trustworthy or a liar. Like all those attitudes are very distinct in really interesting ways that I think that like what I was seeing in the book is going to be really fun to play. Like it'll be fun for players to learn that like being honorable in this setting is going to feel very different from being honorable in a different setting. There you could
Yes, it
be
will.
you could be like a really nasty bad person who's considered very honorable because of the way that you act, and the things you do and don't do.
One of my favorite examples of that from history that I ran across when I was working on this was there's an account of, because hospitality is very important. If somebody
Yeah.
invites you into their home, you are safe. They will not hurt you. That's part of that's the pledge, sort of this hospitality pledge. And there is an account of this Viking hero who gets invited into this Jarl's longhouse, and during the course of the dinner that they're having, he's like, "This guy is a jerk, and I found out he killed my father. I want to kill him, but I can't do it because he invited me in." And so he eventually takes his leave of the Jarl, gives him some gifts, thanks him for the meal and everything. He sails away, turns around, sails back, and burns down the longhouse. And that is considered completely honorable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
All right, we have a lot of questions coming in regarding the bear folk. Basically, will the bear folk that we've seen in the old Margrave be kind of an exact repeat, or are we looking at different kinds of bear folk coming into the Northlands books?
We have two different. So the funny thing about Bearfolk is they have gone through various different versions over the course of Kobold Press history. How they were first introduced, how they appeared in the in the Midgard Worldbook, how they appeared in Empire of the Ghouls, how they appeared in the Midgard Heroes Handbook. They've changed. So I try to condense everything into kind of a get everything on the same page. So there are two what they in 2024 called lineages. There's two different versions of bearfolk, and they're not particularly physically different, but they have different abilities. So they will be slightly different than that part is very different than the way it used to be, but they still are, you know, they still have their apex predator ability. They still have their wild heart. They have their thick coat. All the stuff that makes bearfolk great are still there. And then we have this option that you can pick, so that people can have their different kinds of bearfolk lineages.
Okay, cool. Love to hear it. We love our bearfolk. That has blown up about that. We had another question actually about the werekin. Are they really just associated with werewolves in terms of this Northland setting, or is it actually a build where you can wear however you want?
Well, we have two of the other species in here are beastkin, which we already seen in Player's Guide, and we also have ravenfolk, just so that we can round it out, because can't go and not have ravenfolk. So in the Northlands, because of the influence of Fenris, most werekin tend to be lupine, but there's nothing. But it does say the werekin's animal ancestry can derive from other existing lycanthrope lineages: bears, boars, rats, Arctic foxes, birds, I guess. Werebird, is that a thing? Weregator, yeah, werefrog.
Yeah, weregator.
Airman. So yes,
cool.
there's, and if I was the GM and somebody came to me and said, I want to do a werekin, fish-based werekin thing, there's certainly, it's easy to go, all right, well, here's the option that's going to work for that.
Okay. All right, so you have options, is what I'm hearing. You have options.
Yes.
Now, as for the adventure, so sagas, is it getting a TOV version? So I can report that there will only be a single saga book. It will be compatible with both 2024 and TOV. So it's important when you go to the Kickstarter, hopefully fingers crossed tomorrow to back, you get the right world book for your 2024 or TOV, but the sagas book is the same for both. So there will only be one option for that, but it will be TOV completely compatible.
The main reason for that is saga, the adventures. There's not a lot. There's almost no difference other than format, and we formatted the adventure like Kobold Press does because we like our format. It is superior.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's just perfect. Okay, Cheese Monster wants to know, what can you tell us about the Shield Maidens? What's their role in the Northlands and beyond, and what ability sets them apart from, say, your mercenaries, raiders, and so on?
So we put the Shield Maidens as a new NPC, quote unquote, monster. So you'll have a stat block for them, but they also are one of the factions that Richard Green did. The Shield Maidens, most of them are allied with Sith. It's the Shield Maidens of Sith. That's sort of their main thing. They are, to me, they sit in this fun realm between a dedicated fighter and a paladin. They are chosen. They are devoted to their god, but they are not paladins. They don't have this sort of oh, we have to abide by this stricture. It's no, the Sith will tell you what to do, and then you go off and do it however you want to do it. But they are definitely seen as they hold this honored place in society. A Shield Maiden is an important person. It's an important member of the community, and because they have this connection to the divine. I should say, in the old Norse mindset, and in the Northlands, a farmer leaving his farm and going off into the woods does not expect to run into a god, but they fully expect to run into a troll. That's just a given. So, and that's sort of the mindset. So in a lot of ways, the old, the historical Norse mindset is not that different from the D&D.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, I have a question actually for Bashir. You wrote these really interesting locations. Um, the cool thing about locations is they tend to be full of stuff, like magical stuff. Do you have magical stuff or like weird objects and things that we might expect from the areas that you wrote?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many of these are going to end up getting mechanics, but I already mentioned the dried up blood of Argomir in the mountain veins. The Selkie Isles have the Singing Stones, which are these like ancient artifacts from before like so much of the Northlands flooded way back when, that because the Selkies are all aquatic, they just kind of pulled up to the surface and put onto the top of their mountains and kind of guard. And they have different effects. They present whatever it is they do differently to each person who interacts with them. I don't remember exactly how I'd phrased it, but they have many secrets of old and the like that are in there. And then in Rikerbrand, there's obviously a sort of sword where that one day is going to get used to set the world on fire. Hopefully, people do well enough in the adventure path that it doesn't, but always on the list. But also, him and his wife, Sinmara, kind of hoard stuff in Rikerbrand in the hope of having like a vault that'll survive Ragnarok whenever it comes, and will like have things for whatever comes next to see. And there's all sorts of like weird magical items that have and forgotten lore that's worked its way in there.
Ooh, love that. Okay. Currently, this is our only 2024 book that is planned. You can expect, as we have said from before, we will continue moving forward with TOV. So even the announcements that we'll be bringing in October, keep your eyes and ears peeled on social media, as we will be announcing a big fun weekend in October. I can't say much more than that. We announce next week, and that during that online weekend, we'll be announcing some things that are coming at the top of 2026, and I can assure you they will be TOV. Um, as for all of you at home, I can tell you, as we mentioned, there are two two books set. You can expect your beautiful limited edition covers. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I'm pretty sure the limited editions for TOV and 2024 have different covers for the limited editions. They're different art. They are different. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Always there in chat. It's got my back. In addition, we talked about the rune deck, which is the card deck if you want to bring those kind of rune stones. The actual rune stones themselves would come in a beautiful, like velvet bag. Um, and for our backers in the first 48 hours, there's also an exclusive free Idrisil patch that will be tossed into your box as well for being one of our backers in the first 48 hours.
But we haven't talked about the coolest tier
Well,
option.
I was getting there. I was going to let you do it, but since you go for it, tell us more, Brian.
So I have a friend, Stephanie, who is a rocket engineer, which always fun to have. But she's also a professional. She's also a smith. So she has forged two Type A Viking swords for two lucky backers, and this is one of our. These are our high tier backer levels, and you could get yourself an actual Viking sword. One of them is a pattern welded Damascus sword. But the coolest part of this is we have made stats for these swords in the book. These are statted items. So they are named statted items in the book that you could have the physical sword of it.
This is not something we've produced in mass. There are literally one of each sword. So there are two
Yeah.
sword tiers. You get the whole kit and caboodle along with the actual physical sword. I will go ahead and answer the question. Yes, you will have to pay to have the sword shipped, and depending on where you live in the world. But the swords are designed after actual swords in the book, which is so cool. Kobold's never done anything like this while I've been here. We are gonna have pictures out, and tomorrow when the Kickstarter launches, I'll drop a whole bunch of pictures of those beautiful swords actually at the forge themselves, so you can see them and really get a good glimpse of them. Kim's gonna answer a question we have here, but to answer one I saw earlier, which is what is the reason to back it now, especially for TOV? Well, the books themselves, and you're gonna get the best deal, right? You always are gonna get the best price possible on TOV books during a Kickstarter. In addition, all of the extra items that we're putting in things like the rune deck and the rune tiles, these things may not be available when it hits market. For those of you that really prefer a TOV digital play style, this may not be the Kickstarter for you. Like I said, we are going to work on that. We're going to get it out the door as soon as our little Kobold hands to make that happen inside the Warrens. But that being said, it may be a year from now or a year and a half from now, depending on the timeline. So we like to be transparent and honest about that. There's nothing to hide there. But the limited editions, as Kim has pointed out, are very limited. So if you, and y'all, the covers, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. We'll reveal those tomorrow when we launch, but just know, because they're so limited, you're going to want to get your hands on them right now. So we are here in our last couple of minutes. I'm going to let our guests go around backwards of how they introduce themselves. So Brady, you're going to go first and remind everyone maybe where they can find you, if there's other projects that you might be working on you want to hype. And then again, remind everybody how you contributed to the Northlands book launching tomorrow, everyone, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern on Kickstarter. Kick us off, Brady.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I have an extremely outdated website. You don't need to look there, but I will get that updated soon, I promise. And you can keep your eye out. I've been lucky enough to work on a few other projects for Kobold Press, so keep your ear out. I think those will be coming out in the near future.
That was a pretty good sticking to your NDA there. I liked that. It's good.
Not gonna get in trouble.
I'm Bashir Gauss. I'm Bashir Gauss.
I was going to just say, tell us more, Bashir.
All right. I'm Bashir Gauss, freelance writer, game designer, etc. I worked on a bunch of adventure locations for the Northlands, and I also work on. I also have freelanced for. If you're playing 5e adjacent stuff, probably most companies you have brought products from. Yeah.
Yeah, Bashir's one of my favorite writers here at Kobold Press. No offense there, Brian.
No, his name is much better than mine. It's really cool.
Brian, tell us who you are if everybody at home doesn't already know.
My name is Brian Susskind. I'm a Kobold Press designer. I've been with the company, I think before it was a company. And I was the lead game designer for the Northlands, which meant that I wrote just about everything in one way or another, or edited things, everything that came in, and it has basically been my life since September. So I am very excited for you guys, for everyone to get their hands on this material. Whether you play TOV or whether you play 2024, I think that these books will really scratch that Viking itch. If you ever wanted to have a campaign set in the North, these are the books to have.
All right, everybody. I know why you've waited this long. Not just because they've revealed some pretty awesome stuff behind the scenes, but because you want that free preview PDF. Well, there she is right there in chat. You can click that link and download it now. Thank you for being here for this AMA. I was Dot, your host, and I will remind you all, if you want more Northlands, not only is the Kickstarter launching tomorrow, 9 a.m., 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern. But this Friday, we're also going to have our first scouting party, which is a deep dive interview with some of the writers and designers of Northlands, so that you can get even more juicy and meaty content coming your way, all about the Northlands, what you can expect during this Kickstarter. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to all of our guests, and thank you for sharing your talents, your passions, and your joys around the Northlands with us. We will be there tomorrow, counting down and hopefully watching that ticker go up, up, up.
One more thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, real quick. If your question wasn't answered tonight, I have been regularly on the Northlands channel here in the Kobold Press Discord answering questions, and now that the thing is launching tomorrow, I could probably be a little bit more explicit in what the heck I'm talking about, and rather than being vague and curious. So if you have more questions, That's right. So if you have more questions or you didn't get your question answered, throw it down there into the Northlands channel or the Midgard info channel, and I will do my best to answer some questions.
Totally and he is the man to answer your questions. So they're in Discord, and like I said, more is coming out with the scouting parties as well. We will see you all tomorrow, hopefully, fingers crossed. If you like this, share it with your friends, and if you hated it, you go share it with your enemies. We will see you all tomorrow. Say Kobold time, same Kobold channel for the launch of the Northlands Kickstarters. Bye bye, everybody.